Hello, and thank you for listening to Renewables, a podcast by BioStar, which aims to explore the current and future energy landscape in America.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to Renewables. I'm your host, David Smart, Chief Commercial Officer at BioStar Renewables, and have the honor of being joined by another David Wiers, the President and Founder of Satori Energy. David, thank you so much for coming on the podcast this week.
My pleasure. It's an honor to be here and certainly appreciate the opportunity to share some stories with your listeners.
Great. Yeah. Really appreciate you taking the time and have known your company for a little bit now and have really enjoyed getting to know some of your, employees and how you guys go about doing business. I've been very impressed and really appreciate that. But before we dive into Satori and what you do and sort of the history of the company, tell us a little bit about your history, which probably was going to include some of the company you founded 21 years ago. Tell us about your background and how you ultimately came to found Satori Energy.
Yeah, thanks so much, David. I always tell my team, try to take 2 to 3 nuggets of information away when you're investing time and bettering yourself. So certainly hope that your listeners on this podcast today are able to take a few nuggets of information that they can use in their own lives after listening to this episode. So a little about my background. I started my career with Andersen Consulting before it was actually Accenture. And my manager recruited me to join him at an energy consulting firm in Chicago. This was in the year 2000. So at that point, ComEd customers were first switching over and really having the choice to select a deregulated supplier. That firm that I went to had established a demand side practice and was just kind of dipping their toe into the supply side consulting business. So I was in the right place and literally got in at the ground level when those first customers switched away, which was actually in late 99. So at that point, I took that job as an analyst. I stuck my nose in a rate tariff book to understand how customers were being charged and how they would be charged if they did switch away under this new deregulated environment.
Super interesting. So the back to the beginning of deregulated electricity markets, and you were one of the first firms in the country to emerge after the energy markets deregulated. I believe Texas was first. When did you know that you were going to start your business and talk about kind of what that looked like?
Yeah, great question. Certainly, there were various states that deregulated in different tranches. Some only industrial customers, some the entire market like Texas. In Illinois, we had various tranches where the customers were able to switch away based on size. So I had been working for 3 years in this newly deregulated market. And I found that there was an opportunity to go downstream to really create value for mid-sized or smaller businesses. And so at that point, we were a consulting firm that would charge a customer $10,000 to run an analysis and to show them what the savings opportunity could be. Really, that consulting model was prevalent at that time. I realized that there was probably a greater opportunity to touch more clients and have a greater impact by offering what we now call the brokered approach. So if you think about this, way back then, 2003, if I walked into a bowling alley and tried to convince the owner to pay me $1,000 and I would likely save him $3,000 to $4,000, he or she would probably tell me to go pound sand. But if I walked into that same exact customer and said, hey, you don't have to pay me anything. My company will take the risk, we'll perform the work, and I'm pretty confident that we'll be able to create value for you. Now, I only get paid if I'm successful, and the supplier that you select pays me. That's a much more compelling offer to the business owner. So once I kind of processed this information and my then current employer was not interested in that downstream business, it wasn't long until I started Satori Energy. And I was 28 years old at that time when I filed the paperwork.
That's awesome. And was it just you, or how many employees did you start with?
Yeah, it was just me. I was doing everything early on. I quickly realized that I needed to hire an analyst and also a salesperson that I had worked with previously. So shortly thereafter, there were three of us. I think back to that time, David, and I was meeting with clients, reviewing the pricing, creating the processes for book deals. I was actually also doing QuickBooks for the business at that time. And I realized that's probably not the highest and best use of my time. So I actually called my old college professor and said, I need to hire an intern for the summer. Went up to Carthage College, where I went to school, and interviewed 6 or 7 different people. Ended up hiring one of those individuals, then persuaded her to stay on after the summer during her senior year of college, then offered her a full-time position. And 16 years later, Ashley Cuccio is still my controller for Satori and our affiliated businesses.
That's awesome. I'd love to hear a story like that. And how many employees do you have today?
Yeah, so today Satori's done a number of acquisitions over the years. So, when I look at that category, I say Satori and affiliated companies total almost 60 people. So we have decided to keep brands like Energy Next or Energy Solutions or AGE or Atlas on and continue those brands for various strategic regions. But all of those kind of fall into that affiliation with Satori.
And I believe there are 14 deregulated states. Is that right? Are you working in all 14 of those states or select states?
Yeah, there's you can count the District of Columbia, and then there's 17 total. And different states have various levels of opportunity for customers. But yes, we're working in every state that's deregulated on the electricity side.
Nice. And let's just take a step back. For our listeners and viewers who may not live in a deregulated state or may not know exactly what that means, we have a lot of listeners and viewers who are in the industry and a good chunk as well that aren't necessarily in the industry. So tell us what it means when a state deregulates its energy market, what changes, and how does that create an opportunity for a business like yours?
Yeah, thank you. It is an interesting, people hear deregulation and they think of different things depending on their age, whether it was the airline industry or other industries. And so when we talk about electricity deregulation, that legislation needs to be passed on a state by state basis. So what they're actually doing is unbundling the actual generation of the electricity from the delivery of the electricity. So if you think about the home that you live in, your listeners live in, you've got small, low voltage wires that are delivering that electricity to the home or to the business. That's still done by the incumbent utility. And I've got a diagram that you can use and include in the show notes for your listeners. But effectively, customers have the opportunity to select their supplier of that generation services. Local utility continues to be responsible for the delivery, the meter reading, any reliability issues. Customers that maybe if there's a tree that falls and some power lines come down, you'd call the local utility for that. That doesn't change. So I guess in summary, the states that have deregulated are really giving those ratepayers the ability to choose their supplier and a rate plan. And it's in some ways transferring risk from the utility to the customer. And when I say transferring risk, I mean this. Those customers in a regulated environment, say the state of Wisconsin, you get the bill and you pay it. You can't choose to move to a different supplier. You're stuck with the local utility. That local utility is going to charge a regulated return on their investment. So in a deregulated environment, the customers do have choice, but they also take on a more risk because, like we've seen last month in Texas, August of 23, the power cleared over 20 cents a kilowatt hour. So if a customer wasn't managing their contracting process and they were just paying the market, they really would have got stung. Comparatively, customers could have locked in at 6 or 7. So it gives you an order of magnitude there that it's probably 3 times more. So also, interesting story for any of your listeners that are history buffs. Enron was the company that really was responsible for the spread of deregulation. And they put a lot of time in and resources and money lobbying these states across the U.S., telling the story that deregulation would produce 2 outcomes. 1, provide choice, and 2, lower costs to consumers through competition and innovation. And I think looking back now, 20 plus years later, there was a lot of things that happened in Enron that were not good outcomes. But I think those states that have chosen to deregulate can look back and say those things did come true, those 2 items.
Sure, absolutely. For us in the solar business, it's interesting because we like deregulated states, from obviously regulatory and legislative standpoint. They tend to be more favorable to customers generating their own power on site, but they also tend to be significantly more competitive when it comes to cost of power. So that makes it a little bit harder for us. We have to compete with that, achieving that sort of grid parity. So it's an interesting point you make. And I do think if you look back at the last 20 years, we look all the time for different customers in different sort of classes, industrial, commercial, whatever it may be, that they have been historically very competitive in the deregulated states, and they have not suffered as much. Some states, there's exceptions from, substantial price increases over the course of the last 10, 20 years. So I want to get into, you mentioned a little bit kind of managing the contracts. I want to get into here in a little bit more of what you really do for your customer. I know you go and find them opportunities to save, but I think there's a lot that happens in between renewals and probably touch points with your customers. So I want to get to that, but you were acquired in 2021, by Priority Power. Talk a little bit about that experience and what that's done for your company.
Yeah, happy to. Thank you. So maybe first start by saying that we developed a niche in the market for acquiring smaller books of business. And we did 13 acquisitions over a 10-year period.
Wow.
That many of them were rolled into Satori. And just those contracts were renewed through Satori. As I mentioned, a few of them, we kept the brand for various reasons, really strategic reasons. But Priority had reached out to me and said, let's have a conversation, be interested to see kind of what you're doing and maybe see if there's any synergies there. And so we went down that path at the end of 2020. And I really wasn't looking to sell the business. I really like the team of people that we've assembled. I like the business. It's exciting. It's fun to come to work every day. And I really wasn't looking to sell. But I think there was a couple things that happened that, for me, made that decision a little bit easier. And it is a hard decision, I think, for any business owner to make that decision to either merge or be acquired or potentially even acquire at another firm. And for me, with Priority, was a high level of trust in the management team. And so I knew for myself that I wasn't going to go and sell this business to private equity, for instance. That's just not something that I was interested in. But certainly knowing John Bick and Brandon Schwertner and a lot of the management team for a long time, it made that decision a little bit easier for me. And also the understanding that we had that the Satori brand, we would continue, that, my team would be in the same place that they were. Everybody would be the same or better. So obviously no one lost their job because of it. In fact, quite the opposite. More people got more opportunities as being part of a larger company. So I've seen some of the lower level employees take on additional things. One of my employees, I think that you've met and had dinner with, Nathan Giebel, and he was promoted to VP of Energy Services, and we started to build out that arm of the company. So for me, it was really about opportunity, not only for our team and our employees, but also our clients. If we could take what we've done and offer some additional services that Priority has the ability to offer in terms of whether it's building a community solar project or it's building an infrastructure project or it's carbon accounting, some of those things that we just weren't really going to get to on our own. That was for me kind of the main reason. And I can say 2.5 years later that it's been a pretty smooth transition. There's nothing that's perfect, but I can say that Priority and the folks on that side certainly have kept their word in how we're going to market. And I think it's been a very synergistic relationship for both sides. And I'm excited about the future. I mean, this business is changing so quickly and so rapidly that we're going to be doing things in 3-4 years that we haven't even thought of today. And I'm excited about that.
So talk a little bit about that. Is there more M&A in your future? Drive in a little more. What specifically are you most excited about as you look to the next 3, 5, 10 years?
Yes. So there will be more M&A, and certainly since in the last 18 months, I think Priority's done 6 deals, and so there will certainly be more. We have a platform that we developed at Satori and now enhanced with Priority, where we can onboard various groups and make that. My team has been through it 13, 14, 15 times now. Sure. They've got that down. So we're pretty efficient in terms of that, and certainly making it a easy transition for the targets or for the firm that's being acquired. There's a lot of hesitancy there, and so there might be some feeling of uncomfortability. So there might be some uncomfortable feelings, and so we want to make sure that that's as smooth as it can be. So I definitely think there will be more M&A. The rate and pace of change is happening so quickly. I think we'll maybe probably talk a little bit more about solar and the Inflation Reduction Act later, but I think that there's going to be continued opportunities that come out of that. And if you think about how all of these companies in our business manage data, to me, that's where the real opportunity lies. Because if you don't have good data, it's hard to make good business decisions. And the opportunities will come up. It's how quickly can these firms process that data and put themselves in a position to be successful when making tough decisions. So there will continue to be change, but certainly excited about those challenges and opportunities that await us in the future.
Well, it's apparent to me anyways that you've absolutely done a great job of sort of evolving with the business and with the needs of your customers, frankly. And you mentioned Nathan, who runs your energy services division, great guy, and have been really impressed what you all have done there. And I think that's just sort of one example, but talk a little bit more about the suite of services that you offer your clients and the different things you can do with them besides just the procurement, and how that's evolved, or as we like to say on the show, renewed itself over the course of the last 3 years or 20 years.
Yes, well, it certainly has renewed itself over time. If I think back to the early days, we would literally get a FedEx paper proposal, and then we would assemble PowerPoint presentations for every single client that we would go to. So that has changed significantly over the past 23 years. Now, with everything electronic and almost real time, it's amazing. So the focus of the main business is really the focus or the main business is really on energy procurement or energy structuring, mostly electricity, also natural gas, and then a couple of other smaller commodities as well. That's really where our focus is. However, as we've seen with some more focus on ESG movement, there are clients that want to go green. And what does going green mean? It means different things to different people. But now we can certainly assist with behind the meter solar, with community solar, with carbon accounting, with other tracking in terms of scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. And how we can bring those solutions to clients are certainly different today than they were 2, 3, 4 years ago. I think they're going to continue to evolve and change in the future. And that's one of the neat things about being at a relatively smallish company, is that you can be nimble and change and offer products and services that really meet the needs of your clients. And that's how I started the business, 20 some years ago. And that's how we continue to operate today. What is that client looking for? We may not be the solution every single time, but if we can pinpoint and say, all right, here's where your pain points are. We can do these 3 things, X, Y, and Z. This other thing, is not in our wheelhouse, but here's a partner that we could probably, work with to bring that solution to you. That's the exciting thing for me. It's the problem solving and critical thinking piece of the business that gets really, really exciting.
Sure. So safe to say a lot has changed, but a lot has stayed the same as well. And we, of course, met via TIPA, the Energy Professionals Association. I believe, I don't know if this is the correct term or not, but I believe you were a founding member. And talk a little bit about that. I've heard several people in that organization call you a pioneer. So my first question is, how does it feel to be called a pioneer of something?
Well, I guess it makes me feel old. And I'm not sure that I'm really a pioneer. I will say I feel lucky and fortunate enough to be in the right place at the right time. Certainly saw an opportunity and that the market really needed, and had a couple of key items that fell into place. So TIPA is a great organization, and deregulation was still really in its infancy at that point. The early years, say 2004 to 2005, there were some suppliers that wanted to kind of squeeze advisors and brokers and consultants, ABCs, out of the market. And so we organized and mobilized a group of maybe 6 or 7 of the larger broker shops in Texas. I believe I filed the original documents in 2004. And then I'll give a quick shout out to Shelby Puckett and Constellation for hosting the first meeting. Certainly, as the organization grew, we began to have annual conferences. I think I was amazed and shocked that we had, I think it was 89 people at the first annual conference. And over time, that's grown. I think the last couple conferences, we've had 350 or 375 or maybe 400 attendees or signups, which is just amazing. In 2007, I go down this timeline, David, I think about there were similar type legislative language that came about in Illinois that attempted to squeeze ABCs out of the market. And so at that time, more than 50% of my business was located in Illinois. Got a couple of other key members of that ABC community together in Illinois. And then we founded ALIPA that was really based on the same principles of TIPA, making sure that the market was sustainable for the ABC channel. I firmly believe that we bring value to the marketplace and to customers. And so making sure that we have a level playing field, that we can continue to provide those services to clients and products to clients and be part of the market is certainly something that I was interested in doing. And so we operated ALIPA as a separate organization and then merged with TIPA in 2017. As TIPA continued to grow, there's certainly economies of scale, and it was only a matter of time until it really made sense to do that. So certainly happy that we did that. Worked with Greg Beckert and the Energy Professionals of Ohio organization in the early years, as Greg was thinking about, what do we need in Ohio, and then that EPO group recently merged into TIPA as well. So it is proud. It's a pride thing for me that I'm honored to be associated with TIPA from the beginning. And it's, something that I'm thankful for and grateful for to see it continue to grow over the years. it's a volunteer organization, as you know, so a lot of people have put time into it. And it's just gratifying to me to see how far it's come since 2004.
Yeah, that's great. And big shout out to Shannon, who does a great job running TIPA. The events are always great, always well attended. I'll be going to DC here in a couple weeks. I don't know if I'll see you there or not, but certainly I've been to Illinois this year and New York City as well, which is actually where we originally met, and just all really good shows and really interesting to hear kind of state by state some of the nuance and some of the different things that different markets are dealing with. So we're very proud to be a part of that organization and very appreciative of that organization. So I have to be a little bit self-serving here and talk about renewable energy and on-site generation. You touched on it a little bit earlier, but talk about from your perspective, I guess the shift, if there has been a shift with your customers. And we have the Inflation Reduction Act, which of course was passed into law last year, which has put some additional tailwinds behind, adopting renewable energy. Talk a little bit about that, how you're positioning the company in the market to be successful for clients who are, interested in developing on-site generation going forward.
Yeah, it's a great topic, and I know that there's a lot of information out there, and so this is something that clients, as they think about those things and they see whether it's headlines or they read an article, really understanding what that means for them. There is definitely a great need in the marketplace to make sure that the information that clients are seeing is accurate and is precise. There's some proposals that we've seen out there where people are making large assumptions, which just isn't accurate at all. And in any new industry, you're gonna find that you're gonna have a good group of people that do things the right way, and then you're gonna have some cowboys out there as well. So going back to your question, certainly our clients, I think first and foremost, kind of falls into two buckets. One is I want to get the lowest cost that I can. I don't want to pay more. Doesn't matter what it is. And so there's a certain subset of clients in that bucket where solar behind the meter makes a whole lot of sense, especially in some states where you've got not only the federal credits, but you've got state incentives or municipalities incentives in some areas. And then obviously the value of the SRECs makes a big difference. So certainly where we are in our home state of Illinois, great state for a lot of different things, but certainly incentives for solar is one of the top ones in the nation. And so Priority Power is building behind the meter solar sites. And we've done this for a number of clients, and we've got a number of additional projects in process right now. And then the way that Satori is going to the market is more in that consulting or advisory role, where we're not necessarily building the plant at all. We're helping the client go through that process, very similar to our product and service offering with the procurement or the energy structuring. So I think the second bucket of customers are those that have certain ESG goals, or you think about the city of Boston or Cambridge, and they're passing certain standards that they need to have for any facility, organization, institution that's located in their jurisdiction. So those folks have a mandate where they have to do something. The other piece is not a mandate, but hey, if I can save money by doing this, I'm not selling this building for the next 30 years, or maybe it's in a municipality. We're going to be here. It's got good credit. They're not going anywhere. They're certainly a candidate as well. So I see, with some of the winter storm Uri, and we've got, outages and reliability piece, there's some appeal to that, especially if you pair a battery system with it. But I just think as this becomes more mainstream, we're going to see more and more of it in the marketplace. I think early on, and you might remember this, some clients, well, is that going to encumber the sale of this asset if I have solar panels on the roof? And I don't think the discussion really occurs anymore. Is that going to encumber the sale? It's more, is this going to add value to my asset by having this? As it becomes more mainstream, we're going to see more and more, thought process like that. So it's exciting. It's an exciting time. Just like when things deregulated and there was this new change of how things were in the past, we're seeing that now with solar. And I think the Inflation Reduction Act really paves the way for the next 10 years where there's not this, oh, well, what's the ITC credit? Is it going down, or do I need to get it done by this date? Or, it removes that, which I think will certainly be good for the industry.
Yeah, we call it the solar coaster. It's a lot of up and down, and you're not sure what it, you know what it is today, but not sure what it's going to be next year. And you got to get your project done by a certain date to make sure you're not putting the credits in jeopardy. And so, yeah, I agree with you. It certainly has paved the way, for the next decade and hopefully beyond. I'm curious, just in some of the projects you all have looked at. And by the way, if anyone in Illinois is listening to this, call David or call myself. There are a lot of really strong state incentives, as you mentioned, one of the strongest energy storage incentives in the country. So a lot of good opportunities in Illinois right now, and a lot of great projects being developed there. And I think you hit the nail on the head too, just in terms of who can really benefit from that on-site generation the most. The folks who have a good location, they don't plan to leave for a long time going forward. So my last question, and then we'll kind of wrap up here, is just, our listeners and viewers. I think a lot of folks, particularly those in regulated states, might feel like there's not a whole lot they can do about their energy consumption or the cost of their power. And across the board, particularly in the last couple of years since COVID, we've seen energy prices go up quite a bit. They've settled down a little bit, but still increasing at in some places, alarming pace. What can our listeners and viewers do right now to improve their energy usage or efficiency or strategy going forward?
Well, that's a great question. And I think, if I think about our clients and folks that we worked with over the years, different clients have different ways that they go about managing this risk and their energy spend. And so I think the last word that you said, strategy, is the most important, because ultimately, if you don't have a strategy, you're never going to be able to compare how you did to anything. You have to have some firm numbers and some goals to be able to really make good comparisons and use data and make good business decisions. So if I think about your listeners that are maybe in a regulated state, what can they do? Certainly energy efficiency and anything that they can do to reduce their consumption. It might be in a residential home, a smart thermostat that allows them to program when they're there, when they're not there. That certainly are easy things. I certainly think in those regulated states for C&I customers or governmental customers that don't have choice, well, the more that they can do to be proactive, whether it's behind the meter solar or it's some other behind the meter distributed generation where they can actually take control of that, it will give them a better line of sight into the future, because we know that over time, those utility rates are going to go up 3% a year, 2.5% a year. And so if you can take action to really provide a constant cost over the future, that's going to add value for your institution, your organization, whatever C&I customer that you may be representing. Also, I think as there's more smart meters that hit the market, where engineers, facility managers can actually track, maybe not in real time, but maybe closer to real time, where are we hitting those peaks, and what can we do to avoid those peaks? Some of your listeners, probably know about a demand charge, where a customer gets billed at its highest peak demand for the month, even if they only hit it for 15 minutes. And so I really think, especially in regulated states, those types of customers, if they can identify where the peaks are and then do what we call as peak shaving, so reduce those peaks, they're going to be able to save money and energy throughout that process. lots of different strategies, lots of different variations, but it's really picking something, I think, or starting with one thing that's right for each customer, doing that, and then going on to the next thing. And there will be continued evolution, I think, in innovation in terms of products and services. We didn't have smart technology as far as smart thermostats 20 years ago. Now we do. We're going to probably have something else in 5 years that's going to give customers even more control. So exciting times in the industry, David, as you mentioned, lots of change, and certainly looking forward to the future.
Absolutely. Well, David, it's been truly a pleasure to get to know you, and look forward to continuing to develop our relationship going forward. You're doing an amazing job for a lot of customers across the country, and I'm really, really appreciative of you taking time out of your busy schedule to come on the podcast and talk a little bit about yourself and your company. So how can our listeners and viewers get in touch with you or find you online if one of the nuggets of information that you've shared here has piqued their interest?
Thank you, David. And I wanted to say it's really been a pleasure being on today. I think your podcast helps to raise awareness in the industry. And that's the way that things are going to get better. When people have education and access to information, it will help them make better decisions for themselves, for their business, for the environment. The list goes on and on. So I really appreciate what you're doing. Listeners, I will provide in the show notes. I'm on LinkedIn, David Wiers, prioritypower.com, satorienergy.com. And please reach out if there's something that I can help you with. Would love to hear from you. And David, thanks again. It's really been a pleasure being here. I appreciate everything that you do.
Absolutely. Thank you for the kind words. To our listeners and viewers, of course, thank you. You're the ones that really make this possible. Appreciate you tuning in week after week. We have a lot of great episodes continuing to come up here in season 4. So stay tuned. Make sure you click that follow button wherever you listen to your podcasts. I am David Smart, Chief Commercial Officer at BioStar Renewables, and this has been another episode of Renewables. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Hello, and thank you for listening to Renewables, a podcast by BioStar, which aims to explore the current and future energy landscape in America.